painful.
Painful, yeah. But we're live, so that's nice, exciting. We're back. H3O podcast. We've been recently doing quite a bit of podcasts on Western Hunt Fest and some mountain fitness stuff, and we kind of got a little in between there with some cool stuff. We have Jared with us today, Jared Newman with Hunt League. This is something that Jared and I have been talking now for about 3 hours. We had a little preliminary meeting, and we got some really cool stuff to share. But I want to start, if you guys aren't aware and haven't been around what Jared has created, it's something that we fell into last year at Western Hunt Fest. It was kind of cool how organically it happened. Jared comes over by the booth. We're doing the pack out challenge, and he starts playing catch with his son, which was super cool because I'm like, oh, cool, baseball, huh?
Who brings their baseball gloves to an archery event?
And just so happens, obviously, we run a facility that has tons of baseball training, and my partner Jason, who's absent as always, just so happened to play a little baseball as well. And Jared has a pretty cool baseball history too. Maybe we'll talk about that. But let's start with that. That's how the conversation started, and it's all been a little bit uphill from there. I don't want to say downhill.
We're just rolling. We're cruising.
We got a lot going on, and I think if you lock us in a room, we might not come out for a couple of days. So let's start with Hunt League. Tell me. I know about Hunt League, but tell our listeners, all 12 of them.
Yeah, go to the basics. What is Hunt League?
What is Hunt League? And I just think it's a cool story. I love what it is, and just talk about how you came up with the idea, and then we'll dig into some layers that are inside of the Hunt League, which I think are super cool.
Sure. I mean, coming up with the idea, avid elk hunter. I know a big part of Hunt Hike Harvest is training people for backcountry hunts.
Yep.
That's the roots of it. Didn't grow up doing any backcountry hunts. Grew up in Oklahoma. So,
you got backcountry.
Yeah, you got backcountry, you got backwoods.
Backwoods, a lot of those things. There's not a lot of this.
Yeah, not a lot of that. And if you do walk, you're just walking to a stand or something like that.
Right.
Once you get out here, you realize, man, the training
I'm from Nebraska.
And all the other stuff.
You got it. I get it.
You go sit on a waterfowl, you stand right beside the.
There's some sand hills, but.
Well, what I wanted to do, though, is we had been at it, elk hunting for several years. The first 2 years of me elk hunting, I think I probably covered 70 to 100 miles on foot and never saw an elk. I was like, do they exist outside of parks? What is the deal?
I watched on TV. They're out there
and somewhere. I was walking around. I mean, I had my hoochie mama. I was fully equipped and was just, everywhere I was
hammering that thing.
I had a mountain lion come at me, but I didn't have no elk.
Well, that's one more mountain lion than I've had. So and I'm I'm glad I don't hold that.
I think those hoochie mamas are known for bringing in mountain lions, so that might be the secret. They're bringing the cougars.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, we've been at it and had several years, man, where we're just trying to figure it out. And
I feel that's a lot of people's story with elk hunting now. The first 4 years, 5 years, that's what people are doing. Where do we go? How do we do this?
We're just in the woods.
We're out here. They're supposed to be somewhere, right? I feel like that's a very common thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely the start. And it was how do we learn how to get better at this? Because it wasn't that man, I really screwed up. I had this bull coming in and then I made this call and then it ran away. It was do they even exist? It was where we started.
Yeah.
But over time, you have your first couple encounters and it's oh my gosh, there's one over here. And you started having that. But what was happening is I was we had waypoints, we had different things, but I was man, I need a better way to capture the story of what's actually happening so that I can learn from it and we're better equipped to go into the hunt next year. And so I was really looking for a journaling thing. So for a couple years, I started keeping a journal in the field, would write. And
Dear diary.
That's how it felt. What was today? Nothing. Hiked 15 miles, saw 0.
Yeah. The sunlit up was cool. The sunset was nice.
Highlight of the day. The nap was
but snacks.
Yeah, it was just one of those deals though where I wanted a better way to capture the story of a hunt. And we started pinging ideas off each other. And it's we wanted a better way to capture and share the story of a hunt. And sharing a hunt is always, when you start talking about sharing stuff, inside a hunting community, that's when like families disintegrate.
How much are we sharing here?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Like nobody wants to share.
I love the covertness of hunters that are like, yeah, we go to the spot that we usually go to, or, and they use all this like really vague gray language. You and I have talked about this offline as well. And I think it's so funny, especially considering like once you've been around Colorado or any Western state, or even, any state for that matter, where it's like, if you start to get out enough, you pretty much start to learn where like the better places to be are, the not so good places to be are. You start doing your homework and you're like, dude, we're probably going to the same place.
Process of elimination. Yeah. Are we hunting the same unit?
Yeah.
I'll see you in that valley.
Yeah, right? Like, been there. Like, I'm getting to the point where I've seen guys post stuff on social media, and I'm like, I know where that is.
Yeah. I know about this.
Pretty sure that
your secret spot.
Yes.
And I get that. And I want to protect people's secret spots. Right, so when people share information inside the app, well, I jumped ahead because now we just said app, and it's like, we're talking about a hunting journal, all that stuff. But really a progression of, I think in 2015, we did a dinner kind of celebrating the season. And as we were sitting there at this dinner, we're talking through highs, lows, the experiences. We had a pretty amazing season with a couple missed shots, a couple really close encounters, harvested a really nice 6x6.
Wait a minute. The first bull you killed was a 6x6?
No. I called in, we harvest, not me.
I like that.
But we should have. So that story of that hunt, the 2015 hunt, was just nuts. My brother-in-law, he's in the middle of a job transition, and I called him and I said, hey, why don't you come out here? You love the mountains. Come spend a couple days with us. He doesn't have a tag. He's never bow hunted. He's never elk hunted. Never thought about it. But he's like, dude, I think that sounds good for my soul. I'm going to come with you.
Yeah.
So he comes out, and I'm like, look, we hike a lot of miles, and we never see anything. And I was just prepping him for the hunt. I was like, but we're going to hike, and we're going to have fun. We'll
pretty.
You'll love it.
Yeah.
So we get out there, and
he was a lucky charm.
He 100%, and that story just continues. It only took him 10 minutes to fill his tag this past year on an elk. Like he is unbelievable. Like if you want good luck, call Micah.
That's my buddy Dusty, who like my best friend Darby, his brother. Like you could be the only guy. Like everybody in the boat could be sitting there like doing this and like switching and he's over like, I don't know what the hell you guys are doing. Like,
just my snack. Now it's another fish.
Like he's that guy. Like if anybody's gonna see something, fill a tag, catch something, whatever, it's like him every freaking time.
Yeah. That's Micah.
Yeah.
First morning, we're walking in. We get to the edge of a meadow, and me and my buddy we're scanning. We get our binoculars out. Like, should we call? Do that? And he's like, hey, is that an elk? And it's like, what? And he's like, right over there. And I was like, yeah, it is. That's an elk, Micah. Like, that's what they look like.
That's what we're here for.
That's the first one we've seen in 6 years. No. Yeah. So he points out, and it's like, okay. So I was like, no, you go get set up. I blow a bugle. That thing starts screaming back at our face, runs over, comes within 20 yards of my buddy. When he goes to draw, the elk catches movement and bolts out of there. And it was like, that was Micah's first ever encounter, and like I have it on video of him screaming back at us. Like, this is nuts.
Yeah, and keep in mind there was yours as well, but it was in his first 10 minutes. You're like 5th year.
Yeah, I mean I've been at this point. I think it was like year 7 or 8, and I was like, okay, and this thing just came in like what you see on TV, and it's like that doesn't happen, Micah. Like that's not real life.
Yeah,
totally happened. That night. We call, and that's a 6x6, that one that we call in. That night, we call in another 6x6. My buddy takes a shot. He had ranged it for 60. And I was like, how are you ranging it at 60? That thing is like 30 yards from you. Sent it right over his back.
Yeah, been there.
Trusted the rangefinder instead of like,
he
was probably a little bit of adrenaline. Like, what am I shooting?
Yeah.
So anyway, needless to say, incredible season. The next morning, Micah was with me. I went. Another buddy, he got his the next morning, and that was another 6x6. So,
man, I mean,
crazy experience. But anyway, we get to the end of that season, and we're doing a celebrate the win kind of a dinner. Everybody's talking highs, lows, blunders, mistakes. What can we learn? What can we walk away with? As we're going through this whole process, it's like, man, we need a better way to capture this information, share this information, show stories, pictures, collect it in a place where we can actually walk through it systematically.
Right.
And some of the questions started to come up as far as like, you could remember these experiences, but then, and you could remember like where it happened. Like you could pinpoint it on that. No, I was like right here and the elk was right here.
For sure, yeah.
But some of the stuff that started to get foggy was like, what time of day was it? Like sometimes I was like, yeah, I think that was in the morning hunt, but like how late in the morning? Because some of those details start to matter. Was it like first light in the morning you saw him like as he was going up to bed, or was it like mid morning? Was it, and like, so some of those questions.
Right.
And then it was also like, well, what part of the season was that? Like early September, or was that late? And so you could time it with like, was there any other factors? Is the moon cycle playing into this? Was there, so we just wanted to like start marrying up a lot of data that like our memories weren't really allowing us to do.
I think the thing that's interesting about that too is like you talk about that. I've read some stuff. There's a book by a former Green Beret who his last name is Grossman, and he has his two books. He has one's on combat, and the other one's called On Killing.
Okay,
and he talks about the psychology and the physiology of essentially like modern day warfare. And he talks about works a lot with like first responders, but in a lot of really tragic situations of like how people in those situations, how you help them deal with conflict resolution and all these other things. And then especially in high stress situations, like take a police officer who gets into an active shooter situation.
Yep.
And then you go back and you actually start to interview them, and the psychological and physiological processes that actually happen. So much of it gets like really hard to like digest and then give back to someone. Right.
Sure. So
in the similar context, you're like, well, I know it was here and this happened and like it was at this time. And the reality of it is like, unless you actually were there and capable of like chronicling,
documenting that in real time,
in post of all of that, so much of it gets like skewed so heavily on what you actually think happened and what really happened.
That's crazy. But I totally understand that too. So like I get that.
Yeah, there's some science behind some of those
like
things.
Almost like the tunnel vision of like your whole thing. It's just like you come into this narrow focus, but then it's like there's a lot of peripherals that get missed.
Yeah, 100%.
And then your memory started to switch things up.
This is the genesis of the conversation.
Well, I mean, that was the genesis. And then we get into the competitive side while we're at the table.
Of course.
All right, who actually had the better season? Because I'm sitting here going like, I was a part of all of your guys' like special moments. Right. I was the one calling. I was the one that like took you to this spot. You killed the elk, Dave. But like,
I played Magic Johnson the whole season.
The whole thing. Like I was like,
I was dishing out assists everywhere.
So we were laughing about like who was actually better at what and stuff. Because I was getting onto them. I was like, dude, I put you on an elk. We got one the next morning. Now it's like, okay, there's two cows, 25 yards, and they're right behind some brush. And I was like, and I'm like at full draw, and I'm trying to get them like, can you freaking make a move? Can you do something so they take a step? And I was like, I'm like, do something. I was like, I at least helped you do something. You just left me out there on my own.
We're like, you'll be all right.
Yeah. And so anyway, we talked through all those experiences. And the competitive side, we talked about baseball, all those things. Yeah. It's like, all right, well, who is better? And that's never an answer that you're never going to be able to like figure that out. But it's a fun camaraderie sitting around the table. And it's like, well, who's putting in the work? So we wanted to do stuff like, how many days are you actually scouting? How much time are you spending in the field? How many hours are you actively hunting versus like not? And then there were just so many things that I was like, man, I want to be able to capture this and put it together so you can actually see the workload that goes into a season. Right. So capture, share the story, leaderboard, point system. And the point system and leaderboard for us had nothing to do with like who gets the biggest or the size. Like if you think of a hunting contest, it's how many can you kill? How big, who gets the biggest.
Right.
And it's like none of that was even a part of the equation in the conversation of like what we're trying to celebrate. It's like, no, we want to celebrate the story of the hunt, including the mistakes. We wanted to dissect things as well. How many days does it take between like encounters where you come to full draw, or like we wanted to try to and like identify those things, and then like how can we shorten the life cycle between those things? Like if it's taking you 15 days between times that you're drawing your bow, can we shorten that to 11 days? Can we shorten that to 8 days? Can we become more efficient?
Yeah.
And can our collective stories as we're working in units start actually helping each other become more successful? So we set out to kind of answer some of those questions. Initially, when I started building the Huntley Gap, it was I want a digital hunting journal with a side of like a point system. And the way that I literally described it to somebody was, you know how like in Jenny Craig, the diet thing, I was like, if you eat this, or like a Weight Watchers, like if you eat this, it's like 5 points against you. If it's this, it's 7 points. I was like, that's what it was. I was like, I need it to be like, if you have a sighting, it's this. If you have an encounter, it's this. If and I was like, baseline. Well, now fast forward, I didn't do anything with that, but I started looking for some apps, something that gave that. I started becoming a lot more diligent about writing stuff, did those Right in the Rain journals so they wouldn't get like destroyed in rainstorms. The problem was those weren't easy to share. They weren't easy to like flip back through and find intuitively. I didn't have pictures and video. I wanted to have visuals with some of the different things, even on like simple things of like, I mean, stupid things are like some people are going to walk right by, but I was like, I want a picture of this rub so I remember like this tree and how it was destroyed. Or I want, this pile of scat. It's like, who cares about taking that? But it's like, no, in bear country, I did care about it because I wanted to know like how fresh it was, how big it was, all those things. Yeah. And so like going back into like taking pictures and having that in real time, being able to dissect.
Right. And I think the thing that for us was really interesting was, we were fortunate enough last September, and as we kind of started having more discussions, and you were kind of like intrigued by what we do, and we were like, oh, that's really cool what you do. And then it just began having more kind of dialogue. And then as we got to September, you and I had kind of gone back and forth, and it just so happened like, we're going over here. We're going to be out this weekend. And you had already been out a day or two before us. And then you're like, hey man, what if I just came over and like linked up with you guys? And I was like, hell yeah, why not?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it, right?
Let's do this.
That's a whole other story. But the cool part for us was like, we almost got like what I would consider to be like the expert experience, where you helped us and showed us like how to actually use everything in the Huntley Gap.
Sure.
And so it was like in real time, we got in the field training from the founder, which was awesome for us. It was like, well, here's what you do. Because I think like with a lot of things, when you first get your hands on something, you're like, how do I get in this? And how do I log in? What's the features and what's the functions, right? And so you put a ton of time into all of these things. And so some of the stuff that you just talked about, which is like, I saw a rub, I saw a scat, cow called over here and a mountain lion came in. Okay. Not ideal, right? Whatever. And some of those features that you've built into it, which is like, yeah, it's cool when you have those experiences, but you're actually almost allowing yourself to create historicals within the app, which is like, if I did a cow call or a bugle, or I saw a rub here, was it old? Was it new? Right? Like, and in the past, as I chronicle like my own experiences, like how many times have I gone through, day after day after day after hunt, and I'm like, oh, look, there's a rub. Oh, look, there's scat. Oh, that's old. Oh, that one's new, whatever. And it's like, your brain's not capable of like processing all of that. It kind of goes back to our previous conversation. And so that's like one of the really cool functions within there is, as I'm going through a hunt and you have that integrated into, so there's mapping that's in the app itself, right? And as I'm going through, and if I see one of those things, I can take a picture of it. If I actually see animals, I can put them on video, and it's going to associate them where actually I was in the world within the map. And it's like those types of things now allow me to go, man, was it this ridge? Was that over here? Like, remember we were like, there was water there or not, right? Like how many times have you went into a place like, well, there should be water here.
Yeah. It shows on my map. There's a little blue
and it's line. Not there now. Right. And it's like, I think over time, as you said, like, how do you like lower that curve for people?
Yeah.
And, if you were, take Jared now and Jared before, it's like if you had that when you started, how much sooner would your, experience, like how much would you have shortened that, flattened that curve?
I mean, here's the reality of that now is like, we have new users all the time. They're like, hey, I just moved to Colorado, or I'm coming in. We had some people come in from Wisconsin this past year that did a second season elk hunt, rifle elk hunt. And because I've just got hunt log after hunt log after hunt log stored, I'm like, here, let me share some of these things with you. And I'm showing them what I saw, when I saw it, what time of day I saw it. And obviously you don't share that. In the app, there's no way to share that stuff publicly. It's not like a thing where I'm getting into your journals.
But like the Facebook like forums of guys like, hey, anybody know any good spots? You're like, hey, let me just share this with you.
Here's the GPS. Meet me here. It's like, no.
Hey guys, hopefully you're enjoying today's podcast. We really appreciate you tuning in. If you haven't liked and subscribed to our page, we would love it if you do that. We always value your feedback. Please leave us your comments. There's a ton of great stuff going on. If you haven't downloaded the Hunt League app, please be sure to do that. Go to the App Store, go to Hunt League, get that downloaded. It's absolutely free. There's a ton of great things going on in there. There's a great community that Jared is building in there. And most importantly, at the end of the podcast, we're going to tease a little bit of a new league that we are starting called the H3O Hunt League. There's training involved in there. We're going to do some live webinars. There's a whole host of things, including some prizes that you could win for joining the H3O Hunt League. We're super excited about it. Go to hunthikeharvest.com or go into the Hunt League app, go to leagues and join that league and get involved. It's going to be absolutely amazing. For anything else that you're looking for on here, whether it's on our YouTube page or on our website, we've got a ton of great gear, a whole bunch of new designs within our shop at hunthikeharvest.com, as well as a ton of industry discounts we're providing to you guys just for following along, allow you the opportunity to make your money go farther on some of our gear, some of our nutritional products, and a whole host of other things, such as our Numa gear, our Protect products from a nutritional standpoint, as well as a whole bunch of other things in terms of training discounts and things that we trust, things that we use, that we know will be valuable to you, allow your money to go further, and most importantly, help you operate and have the best performance we can provide for you out in the field. Thank you guys for watching. Let's get back to the podcast.
I've watched it. I had a guy from South Carolina, I think 3 years ago, that sent me some stuff and said, hey, I've never been on an elk hunt. I'm doing an archery. Yeah. And so I sent him some stuff and I was like, man, here's what I would do coming. He doesn't have much calling experience. Sent him that. 5 days later, he sends me a text with a cow elk that he had shot. He was like, the day before I had a bull. And it's like, who does that after like 5 days ever of elk hunting, coming from out of state after never setting foot in a place? And it's not just about the location, but it's like, man, we talked through some of the details.
Right.
And then turned him loose. And it was like, that was like, I've watched this shorten the learning curve. And I'm like, that's what's exciting. Like, and when I think about this I've got two boys, a 15-year-old and a son that's going to turn 13. When I think about the things that they're going to have access to, because I can just dump these journals like in, they could go away for college. They could move out of state, but 20 years from now, 30 years from now, if they want to come into a valley and hunt, like they're going to have an opportunity to be like, man, years ago, my dad had hunted this valley and this was the kind of experiences that he had. And like the way this has the ability to play into conservation from like,
for sure.
Okay, this is what that was like 20 years ago, but now what is it like? Are you seeing more hunters? Are you seeing less hunters? How have the wolves impacted areas? What about wildfires? Like, man, this is the pictures that this was here, and now look at it now. And so we can get hung up and stuck in the journaling aspect. The basic foundation of the app is this capturing the story, the journaling side of it. You're going to get everything locked in. It's in every day is a new day. So every hunt log is an individual day. And you can share that day with a buddy, right? That kind of thing. But underneath that, and this is kind of where the hunt, hike, harvest and stuff like that comes in, is we've associated like a point system with anything that you're logging. So the more stuff that you're logging in the app, basically there's points, but then there's also like multipliers and all these other things, because we wanted to go, as the idea expanded from just elk hunting. Now you talk about like, well, let's talk about deer hunting. And like, if you're deer hunting, how you hunt deer in Colorado versus how you do it back where I grew up in Oklahoma is drastically different. Like last year, I tried every single week. I mean, I put in for my application, had done all the draw odds and statistics, didn't draw. Go to the secondary draw, didn't draw. Wait for the leftover list. And I'm like every week at Wednesday at 11 a.m. I mean, it was insanity trying to just get any mountain tag. Didn't care where it was. Couldn't get my hands on a deer tag. If I would have just drove home for the weekend in Oklahoma, I'd just drive into Walmart and go buy a deer license. And here you get $2, 4 does, go have at it. Oh, yeah. Anywhere in the state, like there's no unit boundaries. There's no any of this stuff. And I'm like, it's different state to state.
I feel like when you talk about that stuff, right? Like especially when you talk about like mule deer hunting, right? And like big country and stuff like that. I have the same experiences where it's like, I go back, I got buddies where it's like, they've done so much homework on like the North Platte, the South Platte River, those types of things back in Nebraska. Right. And those guys will study deer. And then they're like, okay, cool. We're going to go out. We'll set up a couple tree stands, or I've, patterned them and those types of things. And I'm like, okay, yeah. Like I watched guys do that my whole life, like growing up. And then I look at mule deer hunting out here and it's like, I'm like the last guy on the bench in a JV game, like watching like all pros or something. And I'm just going like, yeah, that's way out of my league. I don't even think I belong in that like environment. I have no clue. I mean, my occurrences in terms of running into deer in Colorado are solely by chance, and never I've been like, man, we're really going to go find some huge deer right now. And just follow me. Like,
well, how many points do you have, Joel? And then let me show you some logs in the Hunt League app, and we can change that.
No, I've seen some of yours. Trust me. This is why I'm drawing closer. I need a coach.
200 inches is within reach. Okay,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. So, but I think those are some of the cool things. Is you're continuing to find more layers of how engagement and some of those things. Where you have a personal aspect of it, which is I want to do a better job of like taking notes and taking into account the things that I see and the things maybe I don't see, or what I did or what I didn't do, and did what worked and what didn't work. And then you're using that for your own ability or the group or whoever that you hunt with, right? To try and, as we talked about, like flatten the curve. But I think some of the things to me, like I was fortunate enough, I became an alternate, kind of like the last guy on the bench, to one of your recent contests, which is your Outdoorsman of the Year. And you run a bunch of different versions of contests and things that you're trying to empower and create within the app, which is a cultural aspect, a social aspect, conservation, giving back, like all these different things. Yeah. And to me, Wally, who was the guy that won this year's Outdoorsman of the Year, which was super cool, to see and get to be a part of and learn more about, was to see all of the external things to that, and how he even kind of admittedly said, like, I've gotten rid of Facebook and all my other like social media pieces. I'm using Hunt League as my way to communicate and share things in a social environment within Hunt League. Like, talk a little bit about that, because the more that I do and the more that I see within the app, the more I'm like, that like comment that Wally made, like has resonated with me with since that point. And I'm like, like I really like that community. And you think about some of the other things within other platforms where you're just kind of like going like, I could really do without that.
I know.
And you haven't been infiltrated by, ads and, someone trying to sell you debt relief. Yep. And
we have kept, the Hunt League platform is ad free. Like there are no paid ads inside that. And whether that's you've downloaded the free version or you've paid for the league pass, like the league pass is $14.99 a year. And it does a couple things. That's where you can share stuff, open up with buddies. It opens up all your species. The $14.99 a year is
right.
It's not really about the money on that side. But the idea is, when you jump in the Hunt League community, like these are my people. Like they're actually like, I've met so many people that are now like friends, like, and not like Facebook friends that I don't really know.
Right.
Like these are people that like, no, like now we call each other, we share stories, and they're from all over the country. Like just as, I said that family from Wisconsin. I went to Oregon this past year. I've got some buddies up in Oregon that are looking at, like, he and his wife want to come and do a concert with us in Colorado like this summer. And it's like that stuff, it's like transcends
right.
kind of, and that stuff can happen on Instagram and Facebook. And there's some of those relationships and things out there, but it's really community. And we can narrow that community down inside of our leagues. And so what we've done is we've created leagues. Some leagues are just for fun. Like, there's no prize, there's no anything. When you did the Outdoorsman of the Year, that's like our highest honor. That's the one that, like, man, we want these people to be the people, like the person that gets named and gets titled and crowned like the Outdoorsman of the Year. Like, we want them to really represent what we should all strive for as sportsmen. And it takes into account all the peripherals.
Yeah, I'm telling you, guys, I'm going to provide you with a link, and you have to go check out the podcasts and the lead ups and some of these things. I'll provide those here or in the show notes or both. Trying to decide, there was 3 finalists for this thing. And I'm telling you, as you read through these, like, I think the panelists, there was 5 of us. And this thing lasted 3 hours.
Oh man, it was a marathon.
It could have lasted 6, and it wouldn't surprise me if it could have lasted 9. Because
it could have been a multi-day.
Because as we started going around, and I remember saying this in there, I was writing things down, and we got to interview each one of the finalists, and you also had an individual podcast with each of them, and you sent us like all of their information, right? So we got not only a chance to read about them, we got to listen and hear about them, and then we got to interview them as well. And to say that anyone lost that is almost a disgrace.
I know.
When you look at it, because I could see how easily, based on personality, based on like what people value, like the subjectivity of some of the things within there. And you had a very objective way to try and like score and qualify. There actually was that. And admittedly so, I think I told this on when we were on that podcast, is I was scoring while
filling out your spreadsheet
while we were going. I think I was the only one that was doing that, because then you're like, okay, everybody go to there, because I was using that as a way to determine like, how would I rank these guys in conservation, in, all the different categories that you had them, in a way to try and determine this stuff. And I was tweaking as we were going and to get through this whole thing. And then the best part is because I know how to run those spreadsheets and things like that, is I was watching on the back end when everyone else was voting.
Filling in
when everyone was voting. And so I was watching them tabulate, and I'm going like, oh, it's getting close. It's getting close. It's crazy.
That was nuts. And then it's like, all right, who scored? There's one score missing. Who scores in it? And then like
literally the last one
flips things.
Literally the last one changed the winner.
Yeah.
The very last vote with the very last number plugged in changed it by like, what was it, a 10?
Like, yeah, it was like a 0.2 or something.
0.2.
Yeah.
And it was insane. So like, go watch that, guys. I look at it and I'm trying to think like, how could I compete with that? Right. But you have a bunch of other ones. I don't want to get too far off track with that. Like last year you had a spring bear hunt so that someone won.
Yeah.
You just had like a food,
the Wild Food League.
Wild Food League launch.
That's inspiring me too, because I don't consider myself a master chef by any means,
right.
But I'm watching guys, and like yesterday we were messaging inside that app, like, like, hey, how do you do this canning process? I was like, dude, this guy made a video of it, and we send him that link, and like it's super cool watching how that microcosm of like communities, like here's this Wild Food League, here's a spring turkey league, here's a predator hunting league, here's a Sweet September, like our archery elk league, like that one, like if I could blow any league up and just make it like my own, it's like, 100%. Dude, I wrap my arms around that one and hold on.
Yes.
But there's multiple leagues. So we did a Deer of the Year winner this year. And so there's things like that, in the future. I want to have upland bird. I want to have waterfowl. I want to have, just everything, like, and it's creating all these different little niche groups that people can kind of jump in and join. But the other thing that this really opens the door for too is like, I'll have a meeting here pretty soon with one of the companies that's already sponsoring in some of our leagues, and they're looking at like, hey, we want to have our own league inside the app that's just connected to like our ambassador team. There's private leagues, there's public leagues. Like I think like when people go through a hunter education course, I think it would be amazing where like if you go through it as a group, where that group formed their own league. And that way, like when you leave the hunter education course, like they can actually keep track of stories of all the other brand new rookies, like what's happening in their seasons. Mm-hmm. I'm like, how cool would that be just to stay in touch with some of those people that you did your hunter education course with? It's not like those become your lifelong friends by any means. Right. Yeah. But like I
just had a friend that I know that's in Wisconsin. It's a lady. We work in some similar circles or whatever. And she just messaged me like 2 weeks ago. She's like, check it out. And she like showed me her, like, I just finished hunter safety. And then that weekend she went on her first like upland bird hunt.
Yeah.
And then she sends me a message. She's like, check it out. And she shot like a chucker. It was like the first, and we like end up engaging in that conversation of like, what was that experience like? Right. And so it's really cool because I think that everything you're doing and the avenues and the pillars of everything that can go on inside of there, the overarching piece of all this is like sharing in the experience and creating community and giving back and all the things that I think a lot of us that are sportsmen, outdoorsmen, hunters, whatever you want to call it, right? Like we all carry like a flag and a torch in like some way, shape, or form. Some of us louder than others. Some of us just kind of like to do our own thing, right? But it's understanding and going back again, kind of like to that conversation, thinking about Wally, which is like, man, I want to continue. And I hate to like, I never like to be really myopic, right? Which is like, don't get so insulated into like your own thing that it gets to the point where it's like you're not
even aware
of anything outside of your circle. But at the same time, if you're in these circles for the right reasons, which are all intended to help enrich, grow, create better experiences, right? Like you talked about lineage, like your kids, all these things. It's like sharing in those experiences. Like a friend of mine who owns Audi Obsession, Jordan. They were just on Gladiators Unleashed, like their podcast, and they're doing a ton of stuff with kids and youth about how do we make sure that we're fostering those bits and pieces of what we know, because Jordan's brother had a really good kind of we got dogs everywhere.
Dogs coming in, tangling up.
Yeah. And Jordan's brother was talking about like, man, if we don't like realize that a lot of our folks that are in the 10, 15 years from now of like kind of, if you will, retire themselves out of the hunting world, right? Totally. Right. And that's not filled back in with our youth and other people. Guess what? Like we're going to be in a position where the stuff that we know that's like hanging in the balance, and we see a lot in Colorado right now, is in danger.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Teaching other people, like the way that I kind of have explained this to people is like, man, you protect what you value, and teaching other people to value some of these things and sharing these stories and experiences. Like one thing that I have seen happen over and over again is like sometimes people want to prove their point.
Right.
And to prove their point, they throw up statistics and things like that. And you lose sight of that human element and story. And then somebody comes in and tells a sob story about something, and everybody emotionally gets connected to one thing over the other.
Right.
One of the things that I really genuinely care about is I think stories move people. Stories inspire people. Like as a kid, like all I wanted to do was wear a coonskin hat, because it's like you want to be Daniel Boone, you want to be Davy Crockett, like you want to be like a frontiersman. Right. And it's like because those stories are what inspired you to be like wild and adventurous.
Right.
And like I want to capture the story of a hunt and put it in a way that like inspires other people to want to like to dream, to like, man, I want to have an experience like that.
Yeah.
And because I think stories move people. And I think if we want people to protect these things, you have to make them value that. And I think one of the best ways that you can cause, like you can add value or bring value to that is like you start sharing those human stories and start collecting those in pieces. Because I think in the future, we're going to need these stories I mean, I think some of these things are going to be brought before judges and brought before people. Like, well, these are the things that people saw in these areas.
Yeah.
This was the human experience that now is gone, or now is being diminished, or now is accelerate, whatever.
Yeah.
And our stories are powerful. Our stories are important.
For sure.
So,
no, I I couldn't agree more. And I think that's the thing that I've noticed that is like this slow burn that you can see happening within the Hunt League, right? And just the platform in itself. And the more that I continue to try and invest in it, the more that I continue to see, like every time I go there, I'm like, oh, cool. Like, right. Like the Wild Food League and all this, like I keep seeing like stuff on there. I'm like, oh, look at that. That's pretty cool. And then you're sending out, little updates and, hey, check this out. And I know you have your own podcast and you do some things on there and some amazing people that are contributing and really supporting, right? Like the vision of all that, which is awesome, which is where like, as I look at us, right, in our conversation and, you're a person, we talked about the baseball background and, we've talked a lot about training and some of these things. And it just made a lot of sense where for us, we kind of navigated this conversation, right, to like, well, how do we get more involved, right? And for us, it's, not in a sense of like, what do we get from anything as much as it's like, how do we continue to support and try and drive more interest within the Hunt League, right? So it's exciting. As I mentioned, we talked a lot before we got on the air today, which is pretty cool. And, we're getting ready to try and create something that's going to be H3O, specific, which I think is going to be really cool.
That's what I want to dive into, dude. Yeah. I get so excited because this is what I think makes Hunt League like special and unique. Like the guy that started the Wild Food League, he's all about like that's his thing. It's like that's what got him into hunting, was pursuing this wild food. Well, your thing is this H3O, hunt, hike, harvest, training people for backcountry hunts, getting people ready, using 20 plus years of experience as a physical trainer and leading elite athletes. And now, we have the ability to go like, oh my gosh, there's people inside our community that this is what they're actually craving. Yeah. And it lines up with your passion. So we're going to start seeing leagues pop up because somebody's passionate about this. And now it's going to draw a group of people, so there's going to be private leagues and public leagues and all sorts of things. But like what I'm like, why I'm here and what I'm so excited about is we're about to unleash an H3O league on the universe.
It's going to be awesome. We think in our mind.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I don't see how it fails, like, to be honest, because like there's going to be people, I mean, and it's like, well, what is success? Like if failure is just money driven or those things, like, well, maybe it could fail, but we don't know, but I think what I get so excited about is like the opportunity now for people that want to seriously start training, whether they live in a mountain state or whether they live in Florida, right on the coast, they have the ability to participate within community, start sharing the stories, start connecting, start inspiring each other. Like, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm headed. Yeah. And I was sharing with you today, like, I have goals. Like, as I'm getting older, the mountain treats all of us equally.
It doesn't care.
It is abusive.
You can't. The saying goes, right? You cannot cheat it.
No, and it's hard, and it's and like the mental toll of knowing what you're getting yourself into. Yeah, like ahead of time, like you start like there's sometimes dread. There's something, and it's like, but I know the only way that I want to be able to enjoy this experience is the training that I got to put in on the front end of this.
I think that's a huge part of it, right? Which is the whole just concept for us in general of H3O started from the fact that I've always loved to hunt. Go back to the hunter's safety thing, right? Like I remember going through hunter safety at like my trap club when I was a kid, right? My dad took me there and on my buddies that were there. And it's like one of my buddies that I went through that class with, like his dad trained German, short hair pointers, and we're huge into pheasant hunting. And my parents grew up in the Dakotas. So it was like all that became like so just like part of what we did, right? And then that just kept growing, much like yourself. It's like I moved to Colorado. One of my best friends, Darby, who I mentioned, his dad grew up on the South Gate of Yellowstone. And so for them, all the food they ate were from killing a moose and killing an elk and killing
wild food.
Right. And then they were guiding and, and they like had kind of a resort where it was like, that was just part of their way of life. So then that was fostered into him. And then for me, it was like, he goes, we're sitting around drinking some beers in high school and college and all this stuff, right?
Don't say high school, but yeah.
Yeah, sitting around, right? Like, yeah. And listening to him talk about, we go on this elk hunt. My dad and his buddies did this elk hunt in Colorado for years and years and years and years. And then it was like, how do I get
you hear a couple of those stories, like,
how do I get to go do that? Right. And so I had my first like 1 or 2 years of rifle hunting in Colorado, and it was like, that was it. And then from there, I started digging more and I started finding more. And then I started getting more interested I always had an interest in the archery piece. Like, I literally never owned a bow in my life until I moved to Colorado. And then I saw my first bull like scream. And then I saw like the first, September, where it was like just the landscape and the beauty and the majestic, like, everything about it. Right. And I was like, and I know like a lot of people they're not big on this. I'm like, I could throw my rifle away right now. And this is it.
And live in September.
That's it.
In all of its glory.
Yeah. Like people are like, oh, like what's your favorite time of year? I'm like, September.
Yeah.
Like,
What's your favorite September? Like, that's it. I wasn't even going to ask you what time of year.
Yeah.
100%.
What's your favorite color? Orangish brown, kind of like, So, but it's, it's amazing to see how all of that has progressed. And then I look at what I do for a living, and it was like, I spent so much time like preparing and trying to get ready for that. And then it just became a natural thing where I was like, why do I not share those things back with people that are in this community, in this, kind of same similar space as me?
Absolutely.
And fortunate enough that Jason was kind of like, yeah, we should do that. And he was getting into it too. And, now we're 5 years down the road, and it's like, we're just really trying to get people to understand, even based on things that most people are somewhat aware of that are in similar context to us, is like, this is like what I do every day. This is like, my job is to train people, and I have 2 degrees, and I've done all this work to try and like understand how the human body works.
Performance, how to enhance that performance in the human body.
And it just so happens I really like the archery hunt.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we've just taken that to build it back, like reverse engineer it back into, and as people always talk about, I say like, this is a passion project for me. It's something that I have ultimately just wanted to try and figure out, how can I take what I do for a living and build it into what I love to do?
Yeah.
Right. And for some people, they're lucky. Maybe it's the same thing, but for me, it's like, they kind of are the same, but they don't necessarily.
They're running on such close parallel tracks that all of a sudden it's like, if I just went like this with this.
And trust me, I'm the railman, like trying to just like crank on that thing as hard as I can. Like, come on, I want this to just get there. I just want them to like get on the same track, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so much to learn and there's so much to share. And at the end of the day, for us, it's so fun to get to share and be more in this space, right? And so that's where this conversation is built, and this is where we kind of continue to grow, which is like, how can we create within what you've built that similar type of feel and passion and culture to like backfill that into providing more for people within the Hunt League platform.
No, and here's what I love too. Like, there are experts inside the Hunt League app, but experts is not like universally an expert at everything. Like, you have more expertise at waterfowl hunting than I do, or than a lot of other people in the app. Other people might have a lot more expertise in bear hunting or these things.
Yeah.
Your background in physical training is unparalleled. Like when you step into our arena, you're stepping in as like, man, you are an expert in this, but it's like every one of us has something to contribute.
Sure.
Like, all of our stories are important. And that's where I like get excited about, like, man, when you come into the community, the whole community gets better because we have somebody like you in there, because you can fill in some of the weaknesses.
Yeah.
Where, it's like, man, this is a major struggle for me, but like what you come in, it's like, actually, I wake up every day and can solve this problem, but these problems, like, you know, they're totally different. And that's what I love about like where this is going and what we're doing. Cause I see the need. Like the need is clear as day. Like even if you, and that's like, I train in the last couple of years. I'm training year round for September. Yeah. But it doesn't mean you're always training the right way.
Right.
Yeah. And as you age, the things that you did last year and the years before aren't necessarily the same things you need to continue doing. Yeah. And I loved like the science-based approach of how Hunt Hike Harvest does this. And I'm like, no, like what you're about to bring to the hunting community is like unique. It's special. The league and the opportunity, how people are going to be able to integrate. Like, yeah, ultimately at the base level, the league that we're going to launch, it's like, what does it even have to do with hunting? It's more about like the training side, but it's that accountability, it's that connection, it's those things within hunting and using the hunting even as the backdrop for it. It's like, it's going to be special.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting too, because it's like, you know, we've talked about the Wild Food League, and now we're talking about what we do in terms of training. And it's like, and we've talked a lot about the hunting aspect of it. It's like, it literally is that. We talked about the hunting, we talked about the hiking or the training and the harvest portion. And it's like, that is so what our whole like mission is about, right? Which is like, we value and love the experience of being able to get out and hunt. Yeah. We know the importance of like what training is in order to have better experiences when you go out and hunt. And then the best part about all of it is if you're fortunate enough to actually harvest it and get to share with your family, with your friends, with, you know, other people in what all that labor of love actually looks like, and be able to kind of relish in. A lot of times I know, like for you, I'm sure it's probably the same, where it's like any time, and you've been around it and I've been around it, where it's like you get a chance, like, oh, we're going to have, like we did like a moose bolognese once, and like some of these other things. And it's like, you immediately connect to what that actually, the process to getting to there. Right. And it's like, those things are it's like, that's where the magic is at.
Right? It is.
So it's cool. And I think, you know, we're excited about that. We're excited to continue like in any facet, right? Like if the H3O league has me and you in it and that's it, and we keep,
and we're going to get stronger together.
We're going to crush it. Right. Like, that's fine with me. It's not going to deter my interest level in continuing to support and be a part of what you're building. 'Cause it's awesome. And it's so enjoyable. And obviously we want to continue to push that message out there. I've told so many people, every person I talk to, I'm like, hey, have you heard of Hunt League? Like, hey, have you heard of Hunt League? Yeah. Right. And I'm like, I should be like, hey, have you heard of us? Like, you know, these guys, right? But it's in light of just understanding like how to continue to build and grow that and give people the opportunity, as you said, right? Like, I want to continue to learn about so many other aspects of like what I can do to find more success and have better experiences and all that stuff outside of what I know. Right. Because I always tell people, like, a friend of mine asked me the other day, he's like, hey, what should I put on here? Because I gave him a quote, a project that I showed you before, right when you got here. And he goes, what do you want me to put in there? And I'm like, you know, 20-year strength coach veteran, super average hunter. I was like, I don't know. I'm like, I can teach you a lot, but don't ask me about that, right? But it's cool, man. I'm excited for it. Appreciate it. We're gonna make sure you guys have all the links to all these things. Make sure you understand like how to find Hunt League. It's really cool that people can get involved in it. See, he's excited too.
He's ready to join right now.
Bodie is ready. No. And so we want to make sure that you guys understand how to get there, how to navigate on there, have all the connectivity. Go join Hunt League. I'm telling you guys, it's absolutely amazing. But go lay down, please.
Yeah, I mean, it will be. It's a little bit of a marriage because the training stuff, the Hunt League app isn't built around like a training platform. Yeah. But being able to integrate, you know, the Train Heroic thing with the Hunt League app, and we that's what 3 hours of discussion was like. How does this all work together? We know that you can train people. We know that there's these hunting leagues inside our app, but like figuring out like, all right, how does this overlap? And the opportunities that people are going to have to like win things and participate in things.
There's a lot to come. There's a lot to come.
You don't want to miss this. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Premiering.
Yeah. And it's coming soon. Yes. We're getting ready to launch it. We're about to pull the trigger on this.
100%. So before we get overrun by dogs, we're going to sign off. We appreciate it, man. I'm excited for what's to come. I'm excited to hopefully hunt more, which is going to be cool too. And hey, no. We'll see you guys next time. I don't know. I got nothing. It's over.
I'm making a new plan, rearranging my life, and I won't look back ever again.